Sure, double rat ults. What I really liked was the double Hercules ult. Benji goes in there and sort of like pulls. I was talking to the energy guys and they were laughing. They were like, he's pulling a maniac because it was Benji versus the world. He just sort of walks in, he driving strikes, he tosses the boulder, and then goes, wow, I did 35% of this. Like, this guy's going to die. Benji versus everyone. Then the team finally follows up, and then Venenu tosses another boulder out. So it was actually really funny.
Actually, I think one of the crazier parts as well was before eUnited got their first Fire Giant in the game, Benji hit like 3 or 4 Herc pulls in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And that really just spelled so much disaster for Trifecta. It's just like, it was just like a factory line where everybody was lining up for it.
Well, that's the thing, you know, Hercules, I always tell the story how back in the day, Herc wasn't picked because the players said, he was hard to confirm, which is player speak for too difficult to play, right? And, you know, Benji wasn't the first by any stretch of the imagination, but I bring up that anecdote because Benji rarely, if ever, misses these these hits. It's really scary when you're able to give him the big guy, and Benji absolutely came through in the clutch.
There's a reason why so many players get concerned about Benji whenever it's a LAN environment especially, but more importantly, it's going to be about how Trifecta chooses to respond to eUnited. I think that this go-round, I wouldn't be surprised to see Trifecta maybe opt for a little bit more early game pressure, not really wanting to lose as much global farm as they did in the last game.
Yeah, I mean, you have first wave pressure with the Naja and the Aphrodite, right? But after that, you sort of fall behind, and Naja with the lack of traditional mage follow-up, right? You're not coming down into a Kraken or a Raul, right? Without that traditional mage follow-up, you're sort of relying on the Naja to sort of be the the super carry, which doesn't happen until super late in the game. So Trifecta this time around, I agree with you. Maybe a little bit more in the way of early game, but I got to be honest. Trifecta's draft looks janky, looks weird, but that's the type of draft Trifecta wants.
And it almost worked. I fully believe that if that one death had not occurred for Trifecta, then they would have at least been able to make things even. And anytime you have a healer composition that is even or ahead, it is basically over.
By no means, no stretch of the imagination do I think that Trifecta... We're sitting here asking for a little bit more in the early game. Sure, yes, fine. I don't think Trifecta lost that because of draft. I think that that draft was totally fine, totally appropriate, totally applicable, specifically for Trifecta. If a different team drafts that, I'm asking a couple of questions. But I've seen Hurry on the Afro. I've seen Kiki on the Ymir. Cynosure basically is Naja, a little bit taller in real life, but basically the same thing. I love that draft. I love that team. Didn't work out as the cookie crumbles in the opposite direction. Osiris and Ho Yi, the bans so far. Trifecta giving their second ban a little bit of a conversation.
Some very similar bans to the last game, actually. Both of these picks were banned away in the initial 1-2 period banning pace. So I'm also somewhat anticipating Trifecta to maybe take a look at that Ratatoskr, but they are first pick. This leaves the option for Cynosure to either opt for the Ratatoskr or the Circuit. It's really up to them what they want to go for, and it's actually the Morrigan that they're saying no to.
I like the Morrigan ban here. Like I said earlier, when the Morrigan is selected, or the threat of the Morrigan is selected, as you know the Venenu is going to be able to play it very well, all of a sudden your draft changes because you don't want to pick, I mentioned Hun Bats earlier, you don't want to pick these game-changing ultimates that the enemy can, you're picking for yourself and your enemy as well when you're playing against a Morrigan. So you got to be wary of that. Banning her out allows you to pick, in my opinion, so many other options that might be a little bit scarier to pick if the Celtic Mage is across the way.
And eUnited probably going to have a little bit of trouble now trying to decide what it's pick your poison, essentially, whenever you're during the initial banning phase, because there are just so many different selections that teams can opt for, especially in LAN environments. LAN really does change up the game quite a lot. I mean, I remember one LAN in particular, we hadn't seen on her for like the entire season, basically, and then every other game, it felt like he was just coming out to play.
Well, that's what's interesting is that I think a lot of the time there are so many more options. What are we on a boat? As far as viable gods are concerned in the world of Smite. And you get sort of that top tier and that second tier, and then there's a couple of gods that are just sort of left out or forgotten, right? And LAN is the perfect time to bring out those on-hers. And you sit there, you get hit by a Pillar Impale ultimate combo, and you go, oh, right, that's what this god does. He's actually that scary. So I'm curious if we're going to see the spider or something like that. But for now, sticking to traditional, Ratatoskr will be the first pick for Trifecta overall.
I think it's a smart selection in the long term because with the Circuit being banned away, again, that leaves the Rat to be that sort of frontlining factor as well as the damage part of your draft. So Trifecta, a great decision making there. But eUnited, I mean, we saw what PandaCat did the first time around with this Muzen Cobb, throwing in a Raijin into the mix.
Oof.
Already early game established.
Yeah, Raijin's going to bring that early game and that late game. AMC, though, I mean, when it comes to eUnited, PandaCat's one of these players. There are a couple of players out there that are like this where, the fans, I think everybody recognizes that PandaCat's pretty good, right? But when you talk to the players are like, yo, PandaCat is, like, out of control. They think that this guy is one of the best, even though he might not always wind up in the headlines. His team, number one, kind of finally, I think. And PandaCat has absolutely been a big part of that.
And Izanami with the Ymir. That response from Trifecta, I got banned, actually, the first go-around, where Izanami wasn't able to actually come into play because Trifecta didn't want to take any chances with eUnited having banned the Huyi initially. So the fact that Trifecta is getting this Izanami as a flex pick as well, this could potentially be a Hurriwind taking Izanami into the mid lane, looking to kind of counteract that clear that you would normally expect to go in favor of a Raijin and the AMC should PandaCat choose to start in the mid lane.
Ymir also a selection here that I loved it last game because it was specifically picked against the Artio, which, I mean, you want to lock her down as much as possible. I think Ymir does a great job at that. I also just like Kiki's Ymir, flat out. I think it's really strong.
Kiki had great map awareness in that last game for the most part on the Ymir. His walls actually cut off Benji so many times, and eUnited, that was one of the main reasons why they started to struggle for about a 5-7 minute segment of time, is because they couldn't find a strong enough path opening to actually work into Trifecta's backline, and they were able to stay grouped so efficiently. So if this is Kiki on the Ymir again, I'd be very happy to see that getting run back. He didn't really lose the solo lane phase to Benji. It just, once his team kind of lost the global map contest, then there's not really a whole lot you can do. You know that you're going to fall behind as a solo laner, but I do feel as though this could also very likely be headed for Aror. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a flex pick here. Ymir, I'm a little less scared of picking Ymir if I pick him on the solo side. His immobility really gets punished as a support player, so that can certainly be a little bit scary, but certainly something up in the air. eUnited, think that it's going to Kiki. They ban out Ganesh.
The fact that eUnited are still taking care of supports that they feel could pose certain threats to them. Double tank composition for Trifecta, I think that that's a very standard go-to. I think that this also works out incredibly well for the team because we touched on it briefly before we actually got into game number one with these two teams. Trifecta isn't really a team that has that all-out, standout star player. In my opinion, I think that these are all very strong and talented players that really, once you put all the pieces together, I mean, they just look almost perfect.
Yeah, it's really scary. Trifecta, they just so happen to have Snoopy, right? And he's sort of like their de facto star player, but everyone's going to step up. And I think that's kind of the scary part about it. Giannis being banned out as well by eUnited, keeping an eye on Hurriwind over there. So it looks like the flex picks have proven strong. Trifecta banning out Naja, as Cynosure is not going to play it. They want to make sure Scream doesn't either.
I think another interesting part, too, between these two teams is that Cyno and Scream honestly have very similar god pools when it comes to what they're looking to accomplish for their teams. And both can either flex whether they want to play that utility factor or maybe I want to be the initiating all-in hyper carry. I think that Ratatoskr, while he's not necessarily a hyper carry, he could certainly pull off the initiation part, and that's going to make things a little bit more complicated for Ariziel because now he's got to figure out what do I want to try and respond with.
Well, the Fafnir is going to help eUnited even more so. This is, again, just like feed the hot hand. PandaCat came in extremely hot, extremely crazy. I mean, PandaCat, when it comes down to the you want to dive into the stats here. One of the higher damaging players here at LAN. 21,000 damage averaging in LAN adventures here for PandaCat. So give him the AMC, give him a Fafnir, ready, set, go. Trifecta across the way, though. Well, they got 2 tanks, and an Aphrodite, very similar to what they picked up last time.
And we mentioned it already. Aphrodite wasn't really the issue at all for Trifecta. It was kind of just a really bad team fight instance that ultimately led to them kind of just staying behind of eUnited. And I am also pretty concerned about how that dual lane is going to go. We've been seeing traditionally for the longest time this season at least where hunters kind of just get the farm. And Snoopy's going to have a great opportunity on that Izanami where he's just going to be able to pretty much AFK in the lane and look to build up the farm. But as far as aggression is concerned, and especially against PandaCat, those bees are going to be such a nuisance for Snoopy whenever he's trying to use his third ability. That dash, even though it recently got buffed, and Izanami can actually get away from people now. And it's still fairly easy to catch you out of.
And, yeah, dots. I mean, dots. That's going to pull her out of stealth. I really like that. But, again, you and I started this conversation saying, you know what, maybe a little bit more early game for Trifecta, but all in all, I really like their draft. The core of the draft is exactly the same. You got 2 tanks in Ymir and Artio. Last time around, we had Geb and Ymir, and you pair it with the Afro, and just kind of hope that Snoopy and Sano sort of do the do. And I think that's what they're going for here in game number 2. I really like it. I think that Trifecta just sort of need to adjust some of their game fights, some of where they fight.
I think the same thing could be said for eUnited, though. Even though they've got 3 different picks in comparison to Trifecta, the core of their draft has remained intact. You're looking for that hypercarry protection from the AMC. It's really all about Benji and Verizio looking for the proper positioning on this Ravana Hercules to ensure that AMC just gets to hang out alongside of the Fafnir the entire game, free casting.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm eUnited, I'm just saying, look, Benji and PandaCat are crazy on land. Give them their gods and just go nuts. And AMC, well, not exactly the Blink Artemis that we're kind of used to seeing from PandaCat, but PandaCat's also the guy that's kind of been waiting for AMC. Him and, I want to say Funball, the guys that were like, please, let me play AMC. Well, now you finally can, and PandaCat's certainly happy to hear that.
I mean, I think every single hunter in at least the SPL is happy to hear that. I'm not in particular. I've never been a fan of AMC. Those left-hand autos can really throw you for a loop if you're not used to it.
Just gotta used to it, man. It's just hours in the gym.
There's just something about it that it always will irk me entirely. But what I also really like about eUnited's draft is, sure, they didn't get the Ratatoskr, but the Ravana, because I'm expecting it to be Ravana jungle for Verizio. I don't really see him taking the Hercules into the jungle, although there's like a 10% chance, I would say.
So I really like Herc jungle. I think Herc jungle brings a lot to the party, but I'm never taking Hercules out of Benji's hand. You're just not doing that. I don't think that's the case whatsoever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to head to next. It's not that I don't think that Benji couldn't play Ravana, because Benji is an excellent solo laner. He'll be able to do that regardless, but giving Verizio a god like Ravana where he can actually still have the same sort of initiating factor that he was looking for on the Ratatoskr, I think is going to be very important for eUnited, especially when they're trying to look for the early map dominance. I think that's one thing that eUnited have kind of displayed better than a lot of other teams this past split, at least in North America, because it never really seemed like the early game was out of their control. They always ensured that Benji and Verizio could get the things going, and when you have your solo and jungle performing so efficiently together, that kind of just spells out everything else for the rest of your team.
Yeah, absolutely need to lean on Benji there, I think, for the success of this squad. A little bit of a tech difficulty as we get into game number 2, folks. Bear with us as we await game number 2, Trifecta versus eUnited. Game number 1 went to eUnited. A little bit of a back and forth, I'd say.
And something a little bit more off the charts that isn't really too related to... Well, it's actually related to this game right now, but Verizio's performance actually in game number 1, I think, is a real telling of how much he has progressed as a player when it comes to his own personal positioning and map awareness. I think one of the main reasons why he struggled so much in the past in a LAN environment, and other players around the studios will probably attest to this as well, is he just never really seemed super consistent and super steady in his decision making. I mean, he has one of, if you look at all the North American pros for their KDAs, at least in the jungle section, Verizial is actually close to 5 deaths, and that is substantially higher than anybody else when it comes to the jungle role.
I think that there's a much larger conversation there, and I'm glad we get a couple of minutes to really talk about it, because eUnited has been an inconsistent team, not just in their play, or perhaps not in their play period, but in their ability to really amass a roster and their ability to sort of create just cohesion amongst themselves. PandaCat took an extended leave once upon a time, and I think that almost 5 deaths goes all the way back there. PandaCat sort of takes a break, and all of a sudden Scream is the guy, right? PandaCat was the star on this team, and then Scream, hey, it's your job to win the game. And he's like, what? He has the ability, but that mental shift is really big. And I think we saw Verizial or Scream really play hyper-aggressive and wind up kind of falling because of it.
And that 5 deaths per game, by the way, that's like an overall stat from all of Scream's LAN performances at least. And that's a pretty high amount to be dying on LAN. And of course, this is really the LAN where he gets to finally prove to everybody, I'm here to show you guys the same thing that you saw from me online.
Right. And I think that's sort of, again, I think that Scream had the mentality of, he's got to play hero ball. He's got to be the guy. And coming into this LAN, that's not the case anymore. You know, you've got leader PolarBearMike. You've got Benji over there in the solo lane. You've got PandaCat playing in the hunter role. Scream just has to do his job. He doesn't have to go above and beyond, which means I don't think he's going to be as aggressive, which means I don't think he's going to wind up with as many deaths. They understand it's a team environment. I think that eUnited, for the first time in a long time, Taco, look comfortable, which is perhaps the most important thing coming into LAN.
Synergy and just how comfortable a team can actually be within their own environment. That is such an important factor. A lot of people can sometimes overlook it. Not so much anymore. I think Oxygen Supremacy's run, even though that happened a while ago now, that was really the shining light for most people to understand. Wow, when a team just works super well together, it doesn't matter whether they were the 5 most talented players mechanically or not. As long as you have that developed synergy, fireworks are probably going to happen. And for eUnited, I think that's kind of just the stride that they've managed to achieve, especially in this season. And again, I mean, we talked about it already. I really do think that PBM was probably the best thing to ever happen to this team.
Absolutely. I just point directly to PolarBearMike. eUnited as a unit, that, like you said, you mentioned Pain to Beyond, they're used to really working under sort of one distinctive leader. Even though if you ask Mike, he's going to say, oh, it's not just me, it's the team. But that's part of what makes him such a good leader. You know, even going back to, like, you know, owner Clerky, like, look at how he works out with this unit, leaning on these guys, specifically, like I said, PBM there, the ability for this team to really group together, call themselves sort of like a family, that goes beyond just the 3 lanes here, and it's very, very important that a team feels as comfortable.
And it's also going to be on eUnited to kind of make sure that it's nice because PBM has the Fafnir in this game, which means that if he wants to, he can choose to look for the initiation factor and allow Benji to kind of peel a little bit more for the backline. But this is probably more perfect that it's going to be Benji on the Hercules, because if Benji has free reign to one more time, just head all around the back line, head all around the front line, just consistently hitting those Earthbreakers.
Yes.
And the Earthbreakers is probably the most crucial part of all of this, because that follow-up was just absolutely insane. PandaCat had so many different opportunities to consistently hit his abilities and his auto attacks, and anytime you let your AMC have the double lifesteal as well, super smart acquisition as well by PandaCat in that last game, making sure that he had the Devourer's Gauntlets and the Aussie, because that proc, I mean, we saw when it came up huge for him.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. Definitely kind of scary. Meanwhile, the Chunk trying to be scary himself. Aror comes in here piloting his squad into what could be a win for them. Of course, it's a best of 5, so both teams are going to need 3 to find themselves in the driver's seat. But Aror here, we've been speaking a lot about the guys on eUnited. Aror and Trifecta, also a really strong team, repeating their draft that they lost with last time around, but I think there's strength in it. I think that they have confidence in their ability to play their style comp. I was talking to the Energy guys, and we were discussing their drafts, and straight up, what I said and what a couple of guys said was, you know, if a different team drafted this squad, drafted this roster of Aphrodite and, you know, 17 tanks and a Naja, I might scratch my head a little bit. but it's Trifecta and Aror. They can probably make it happen.
I think everybody would have probably just been like, I mean, just imagine Baskin Aphrodite, all right? I don't even want to think about Baskin on a large amount of gods. I mean, have you ever seen Baskin's Thor? You don't want to, by the way. And on top of everything else, though, I think that this draft is kind of just, it spells out not United, Trifecta's actual nature when it comes to gameplay. And it also really goes to show just how much every single member of the team really tries to help each other out, because it's one of those compositions where if everybody's not on the same page, you're going to know it because it's going to show. There's no way to hide that.
Yeah, you can't really hide here at LAN. I mean, everything up against the wall. So pretty crazy stuff going on here. Trifecta, as we said, down one game. Their leader, Aror, certainly somebody that can help bring the pain, though. I mean, this guy has been a little bit of a leader for the squad. Game number 1, he picks up the Geb. Not his finest game here, but able to contribute.
It was a really rough one for Aurora. He took a couple of early spills when he was trying to roll around the map, and that's just one of those circumstances where you can't really control what's happening. And he did his best with those shockwaves and the cataclysms, but there were just certain circumstances where he just couldn't be there for everybody. And that is one of the slight downsides of Geb, is early game, that's really a chance for an NEV team to punish you. And especially when eUnited drafted so aggressively for the early game, that made it all too easy for PBM to kind of just catch him off in that Crypto field and let the team do the rest.
Yeah, I mean, Artio is typically a character that you're just going to collapse on, lock down, and do the dirty with, but not going to happen last time around. Here's one of the earlier clips during the regular season, and I think this really shows PolarBearMike's playstyle, where he's just going to jump in and look. You get the jump in, he goes, all right, guys, I did it. He looks over his shoulder. He's like, you guys there? All right, fine. And then he is out and lets his team do everything else. Benji's going to collapse. PandaCat's going to, everybody's just going to go in. And it's a lot of fun to watch.
And we didn't really get a whole lot of chance to talk about that Aphrodite for Hurriwind, but in game number 1, I actually think that Hurriwind came up super clutch with some of those ultimates on the Aphrodite. That immunity just buying his team so much time, negating Venenu and Screammmmm initially on that Ratatoskr. They had a lot of difficulty trying to penetrate that backline because the immunity off of, wow, he's actually just
He moved. I thought this was a still. I didn't realize we were video.
I thought that it might have frozen the feed.
Look at Hurriwind compared to the admin behind him. Just barely. Oh, okay. Oh, we're getting going. Can I play Afro? Okay. He's just gonna go back to sleep again. He's become very, very valuable. You want to talk about players? You want to talk about players in their journey? It's been a couple of years coming. Hurriwind finally sort of makes it to the big times this entire season. A little bit of last season as well on Soar, and then Venenu. He's still on his journey. This is the guy that showed up sort of as a side note on ALG, and now here he is, one of the center points for his team.
Well, here's the thing, though, about Venenu, is that when he came onto ALG, everybody else was kind of just joining onto the whole Wirecoat Baby and Venenu even on this team in the first place in the SPL. But when you look at the way that he is actually making an impact for eUnited right now, Venenu has incredibly clean comms, if you were to ask around the scene a little bit. And on top of all of that, very level-headed when it comes to the team fights, whether they go poorly or whether they go incredibly well. He never really lets himself fall behind or get too full of himself. That's probably one of the most important factors. When you come into a team as a rookie, essentially, and you're kind of just fresh to success, that's really the most important part. It can really build up in your own ego, and I mean, everybody's got to have a little bit of an ego. That's what keeps you confident, and confidence is key whenever you're looking to be a top-tier team.
We just took a look at this guy, PandaCat, on screen, and he looked absolutely fantastic last game. Always going to be aggressive. I think giving him the AMC, the right call.
And I think on top of that, again, PandaCat, he's not able to make any of those plays unless he's got his team protecting him. And probably the biggest protector he had in that game was Benji. Benji was not letting anybody through to the rest of eUnited. They were having such a difficult time. I mean, it was part of 11 out of all the kills that eUnited was able to gather in that last game, because it was a fairly low kill count game considering the circumstances of how far behind Trifecta did eventually end up falling. And that was another thing actually to get into was I actually marked it. Yeah, the boulders are always a fun time. But at 14 minutes, eUnited was actually up by 5, or it was around the 14-minute mark because they had just secured the Goal Fury. They were up by that 5,000. Then they had that little bit of a turnaround from the whole Portal Demon engagement that happened around 17 minutes. And then not even a few minutes later, 25 minutes. So within a 10-minute time period, eUnited went from almost losing at least the map pressure, and then they're immediately up by 10,000 gold. Yeah,
what a crazy game. And Benji tends to be the player that I think you give him Hercules and you just say, hey, you are our get out of jail free card. If we get into trouble, Benji, do the do. Just a little brief moment. Actually, we're done. We had a technical difficulty, and we've crushed it. Game number 2 coming right at you. I won't delay you any longer. It's aggro, it's Hindu, it's game 2.
Thanks so much, Analyst Desk. Yes, we're finally ready to go into this game. Players had a brief moment to get themselves collected, and we've pretty much talked everything on the desk about what could happen in terms of this game. Couple of options in terms of potential differences, however, though, Aggro, in terms of where we could see some of these roles. Artio solo, Ymir solo?
Yeah, I like this idea for Trifecta to go for Ymir solo once more. Look, Kiki didn't have the best of laning phases and had the one fatal mistake that really turned the game back in eUnited's favor. They covered it on the desk. His getting picked off by his own purple buff on that left-hand side really started eUnited rolling back into this game. But I think the Ymir as a whole wasn't a big problem for Trifecta. It wasn't a big impact necessarily.
Agreed.
Wasn't the game that Benji had, but it not bad enough that I don't hate them going back for it.
We'll start the game. Just keep an eye on the itemization here. We've got Venenu starting off with the Book of Tarthrush, which we've seen a few different times before. Currently 3 members of eUnited group towards the mid lane. It looks like they're going to send PolarBearMike off to defend the buffs as the Fafnir, the weakest of wave players, I would say, in terms of this composition that eUnited have drafted.
That's because Snoopy's playing this Izanami, and you want to talk about level 1 clear, you want to talk about clear at any stage of the game. Izanami does it best. Hurriwind's going to try and get the minis off of the red, I believe. No way he tries to go for the full red buff unless he wants to spend some time doing it. No, he's going to leave the big buff itself, get the minis, get some XP, and now he can head towards that mid lane. Might be able to hit level 2 depending on how many minions he missed.
So eUnited on the right-hand side will steal away the blue buff from Trifecta. Trifecta, however, will steal away the red and now look for the purple on the left-hand side of the map too. So advantage left-hand side Trifecta, right-hand side eUnited.
And this is what Trifecta needed to do, is get Snoopy off to a better start than they did in game number 1. Snoopy and Aror end up falling for those first 2 kills in eUnited's favor. And then PandaCat just kind of got to do whatever he wanted for the rest of the game. I like this adjustment from Trifecta. Make sure that Snoopy, who in my mind is the carry of this team, is the star player of this squad, can get off to a start that allows him to be that carry guy.
Really good decision from both teams here about how to deal with the map at the beginning. With Trifecta now being able to get those oracles, it makes sure that PandaCat doesn't get enough work in this mid lane to continue putting the pressure on, so now he'll have to rotate back towards the duo.
And look at the buff split going in eUnited's favor overall. Yes, Scream and the rest of eUnited get their buffs on the right-hand side, but Cynosure was able to secure his own speed. Kiki wasn't able to get a blue buff, but it's Ymir. You're not really worried about it too much. You really only need that second ability to clear the wave anyways, so yes, it sucks losing the farm from the golden experience and the blue buff, but the buff itself not that important. Cyno gets that important speed buff, and look at how many buffs Trifecta got on the left-hand side. It's not often that eUnited gets out-buff traded in the early game, but this is one case where it happened.
For me, though, the most important thing is the eUnited's jungler, Scream, or Verizil as he's known, actually gets off to a good start on this Raven. We've spoke about Raven a lot. From ahead in the jungle, he can be very impactful. If he just gets to waste away, basically, towards the mid-game, it's the assassins that come online a lot better and do more impactful things.
Yeah, this is the guy in the pick that I think is going to be critical here. For eUnited in particular. Snoopy's going in, using the ultimate on the left-hand side to get as much poke on a PandaCat as possible, force out the purification beads, but it's Scream in the mid lane.
Mentioned it, hit level 5, look for the play, and he finds it exactly onto Aphrodite early on. And if you notice, Hurriwind was still only level 4 there.
Exactly what happened last game, where Hurriwind rotates. They try and take a fight when they're only level 4, but it doesn't work out. Now Sprint popped on the left-hand side. PandaCat's going to be the focus. Auror's going to be able to find the root here. Guaranteed onto that AMC, but good body blocks from PBM mean that PandaCat's going to stay safe.
Nice little work from Snoopy and Aror there. Obviously, if Snoopy hadn't used the ultimate earlier, that would have been a great place to be looking to use it and potentially have picked up the kill onto PandaCat. But all the pressure so far, once again, first blood goes to eUnited in this game, and it went to the character we were just talking about, which is going to be so important in this one.
Yeah, Screammmmm getting off to a great start in this Ravana jungle. Also a great start for Ven, who finishes off that Book of Thoth at 3 minutes and gets a ton of power for it. He didn't have to use that ultimate in that gank in the middle lane to secure the first blood, so good looks so far for eUnited.
And now with this, you can see left-hand side Trifecta looking towards the red buff once more of eUnited. This time round, though, Panda and PolarBearMike at level 5, and with the pressure from mid lane being evened out, they've got to be careful here, Trifecta, about this idea.
PolarBearMike, the focus for the moment, he's going to be able to jump up and over that red buff wall. That's exactly what eUnited did, was trying to invade reds, but this time, it's on the other side.
PandaCat under pressure, but round the back comes the drums from Venenu. This could be a lot of problems. Hurriwind under pressure at the same time. PandaCat, though, still boxing away with Cynosure, and Cynosure will pick up the kill. It's answered by Venenu, who gets a double kill. 2-for-2 exchange.
And Aror is going to be able to clean up Ven there and get that bounty for that double kill that he had just got for himself. 2 for 2, but red buff goes down. Not sure who it went to. It doesn't look like it got picked up in the midst of that team fight. Maybe Ven picked it up and then died. That's why it's not on the buff. So it looks like eUnited was able to get it, that red buff, but Trifecta able to steal away that purple in response. I think that overall favors eUnited, though, because that's 2 kills to Venenu, and it's a kill onto Hurriwind, who, again, falls behind early on this Aphrodite. And as we mentioned in game 1, that's kind of okay for Aphrodite. She's not expecting to get ahead in the early stages. She's a mid to late game, sustained nightmare. But to be far behind to a Ravana who's now up 2 levels over Hurriwind, to the Raijin who can force that ultimate all by himself probably at this stage with how much damage he's got with that Book of Thoth and being level 7 is going to be tough for Hurriwind to compete with.
Well, I can see where the pressure from Cynosure's come in this game towards the dual lane. This AMC, we mentioned it in game 1, went unchecked, which allowed PandaCat to do a lot of damage in that first game. Second game, though, you saw how not greedy, but very aggressive Trifecta went, looking to pick on PandaCat early on.
Exactly, and like I mentioned, that's what eUnited was doing in game 1 against Snoopy, invading red buff, not invading speed buff, where everyone has been saying, oh, we got to watch out for the speed buff invades. In this set, so far, it's been the red buff invades, it's been the purple buff invades, and Cynosure's at it again.
Looking for pressure, but PandaCat will return some of that damage. Cynosure will be able to sustain up mid lane, though. Drums on Hurriwind, who's just trying to survive as long as possible. No ultimate left available. The boulder was there from Benji in case it was required. Aror will slip away, and Benji could have found that kill if he had that boulder still up, but I like the idea.
Kiki makes the rotation, even with the speed buff, can't get there, and Hurriwind has been the focus so far for eUnited in game 2. 3 out of the 4 deaths, they're on Trifecta's mid laner, and then that's not a great look for Trifecta. They need to make sure that Hurry can stay safe. Problem is even with Aror there that time in the 2v2, wasn't enough to save Hurriwind's life.
Very interesting to see the level differences between the two. Kiki's just going to get zoned away by Benji from as many creeps as possible. Obviously, he'll still get the experience, but just trying to deny how much gold he can get from that wave.
And that's the Hercules Ymir matchup once more, going heavily into Benji's favor, up about a level and a half already in this game, and saw what he's able to do with it in game 1. Basically carry the game in my mind in the initiations, in the keeping Kiki and Aror in particular, really moving them around, trying to get them in position for the rest of eUnited to bring them down. It looks like he's off to a great start and doing it here again in game 2.
Cynosure's 10 is most certainly set up in this left-hand side. The hives will give a bit of vision, though. It's a short-range vision, but it will give a little bit of vision. And the one thing you've got to do there is make sure you destroy those hives. And Cynosure doing that means that AMC's abilities are kind of short-handed there.
And this is the response by eUnited, though. Look at the minimap right now. Screammmmm, he's sitting right on top of that speed buff to make sure that Cynosure is going to lose out on that farm and lose out on that buff on the right-hand side. It's a give and take. When you're camping one lane, you're going to be giving up pressure in the other, and this is just more guaranteed farm for Benji. It's not a big deal if Cynosure is able to get the experience from the red buff invade on the left-hand side. That's net even. He's giving up 1 to get another one, but it's Kiki who's going to be the one suffering. He's not getting any buffs on that right-hand side anymore, and Benji's getting all of them. So that level difference, the gold difference, is going to continue to get bigger for that solo lane.
Well, Hurriwind going to be pausing here for a moment. More than likely going, excuse me, I'm playing Afro. Why am I dead twice already in this game? Was it the third already?
Yeah.
That's going down quick. Obviously, the ultimate not keeping him alive. The ultimate does grow in length, though, as time goes on, which is very important for Aphrodite. That's why the early game can seem a lot more susceptible to gank it.
And you don't get as much healing off of those birds. I mean, it's scaling off of power, of course, as well as per rank. You're not doing as much damage with that back off. You're not sharing as much mana with whoever you're linked with that kiss. You've got a lot of things that you need to get those points into as Aphrodite, and that's why we always talk about her as not an early game god, but a mid to late game god.
But with the focus now that we've seen from Cynosure towards PandaCat in this dual lane, this is why we're seeing Hurriwind getting more focus in the mid lane in response. It's a tit for tat scenario here of if we go aggressive in one lane, another lane's going to look to pressure, and it's working out better for eUnited so far.
And if you look at what PandaCat went for, he actually went for some Talaria boots in that hunter role. So he's actually giving up some power to get a little bit of extra mobility when he's out of combat. Now, whenever Cynosure's on top of him, it's not really going to help him out too much, but that extra little bit of gold, it's great on AMC because you can poke out your opposition very easily. Remember, you can just throw away the honey, and honestly, Cynosure being over there in that lane ends up making those Talaria boots even much more valuable. Usually not great on laners because you can only do it once every minute or so to get that 30 gold proc, but if there's another god with you there, that means you can get that 30 gold off of them as well. So by coming over here, if Cynosure's not getting kills, all he's really doing is giving PandaCat an extra 30 gold every minute.
It is looking, though, like a bit of a Venenu versus Snoopy matchup, this one already. Just because Venenu, he's the one with the lead in the mid lane here for eUnited on this Raijin versus, what we're seeing out of Snoopy. Snoopy getting a lot of help in this duo lane, that means they're putting the weight on his shoulders.
But keep in mind, I mean, Trifecta's duo lane is slightly ahead. You look at the mid lane for eUnited, they're up by a lot. You look at the solo lane for eUnited, they're up by a lot. So that's two big leads in two lanes compared to one small lead in one lane in Trifecta's favor.
And that's a funny story as well, because generally when you look at the lanes, because there's three of them, you always compare all three lanes. So it's always a 2-1 scenario, or a 1 for one team, 1 for another, and an undivided one, between the two. But 2-1. Math is really simple.
But it's the fact that those two leads that eUnited have are more substantial than the small lead that Trifecta has. So it's that much more impactful, and it's on the characters that can really end up doing a lot for you. Scream's been off to a great start on this Ravana jungle, and,
so important,
and he's been a catalyst for this team. All fall split long. Venenu has that lead. He's going to be putting out plenty of damage that Hurriwind's heals really aren't going to be able to answer. Remember, Aphrodite's not great at those in-combat healing scenario, or out of combat, I should say. The in-combat healing is a little bit harder to deal with because it's on one target and he can choose who that's going to. But out of combat, it takes some time to heal everyone up. You've got to switch your kiss target. You've got to switch your link to make sure that you can hit as many people as you need to in between the fights. That in combat is where it's going to be more impactful. But with how much damage Raijin does, I'm not sure that Hurriwind's going to have the heals to combat that damage anytime soon.
Yeah, really awkward situation now with how this game's played out, because just how it's gone down overall so far. It's not real surprising to see Trifecta trailing again, just based off the compositions. They don't have great control in every single lane. They've only really got control in the dual lane, which is where they put the pressure in game one. So in game two. In game one, very similar story. The Afro Ymir, same sort of thing. They're not going to get enough pressure on the map. So they're expected to be behind in the first 10 minutes.
But how well can Kiki play from behind? And once it reaches the 15-minute team fighting stage, he did pretty well last time around, but then ends up getting picked. Exactly. Yeah. And part of that, the reason that he falls so quickly when he gets picked is because of the fact that that right side was kind of ignored by Cynosure and the rest of Trifecta, trying to keep Hurriwind up in that mid lane. This time that focus has been transitioned into the dual lane, but that's left Hurriwind exposed, and eUnited's punished them for it. It's left Kiki exposed again, and he's again down by a significant margin in that solo lane.
Cynosure, one of the players there you saw on your screen, who transferred from the console scene this year.
Yes.
At the start of last year.
This year.
This year, and look where he is right now. Like, he's having a fantastic performance for himself overall throughout the year. Obviously, with Trifecta through the Valentia as well, and now looking to try and get himself to hi-rez Expo off this set.
Yeah, he's a really talented player. I played against him a lot on the console scene. He's always had that Naja in his pocket, the Ratatoskr, that fits his playstyle really well, getting pressure in the early game, and he doesn't have to be that big carry jungler guy. He's a pressure dude. He's setting up for his team. He's putting himself in the right spots on the map to put other people on his team ahead. That's always been his play style, and he does it very well.
And funny enough, when he does the Naja, sometimes he'll play it aggressive, but sometimes I've seen defensive Naja plays out of him where he's peeling on the back line with the sashes and the ultimate and the ring toss, just to allow his team that room that they're going to require to get the damage out.
He's a versatile player, and especially in jungle, you need to be versatile at this level because the jungle is so important. You can fill so many different roles coming out of the jungle. I mean, look at how Cherio plays the game, playing, you know, these supportive guardians, these assassins that are meant to just set up his team. And then look at how Adapting plays the assassins, the hard carries, you know, coming around the backside of these team fights, murdering everyone. It's such a versatile role in jungle that you need to be able to play multiple different styles in order to be successful, or else you're going to find yourself behind the 8 ball whenever a team kind of bans you out or picks successfully against you.
Well, if you're just tuning in, we'll be back in game momentarily, just so you guys know at home. It is 1-0 so far to eUnited in this best of 5. Winner of this set will move on to hi-rez Expo, guaranteed. We won't find out exactly what spot they'll get for hi-rez Expo in terms of seeding until later on this week. The loser of this game, however, is going to in for a very nice treat because Energy Noble and a few other teams will be joining them in the wild cards on Friday and Saturday.
I'll tell you what, every single year the Super Regionals wild cards get even crazier. I mean, the fact that Energy's down there, a very good Noble team. And then you look at the 4 teams that are here for each region that auto-qualified, a team is going to drop down from each of those matchups, and they're all going to end up playing each other. That's going to be a ton. 6 amazing teams playing out against one another. And only 2 of those 6 are going to end up going to Worlds. You really want to make sure if you're in these semifinal matchups that you take advantage and punch that auto ticket to Worlds.
And that's what eUnited are trying to do here, which means Trifecta and Energy will be in the wild card starting on Friday. Those 2 names on your own, when you think those 2 before you add any of us to the list. Obviously, Noble, the real underdogs of this whole land for me. Yeah. When you look at the lineups from everybody else, I think Elevate could potentially join them, but Elevate season's been fantastic.
They have.
You can't count them out, even though they're against Obey.
Who can you count out here? I mean, in Noble, as you mentioned, the underdogs here, probably the team that no one expects to have the most success, but they've surprised a lot of people so far this split. They've got some really talented players on that roster, and they're starting to mesh really well. And it's a LAN environment, you know. All it takes is Energy not having the greatest start, or
for sure,
you know, Trifecta, whoever is in that group stage, to not have the best start, and then stumble against Noble, and all of a sudden it's all in, you know, flux. Who knows what's going to happen? The group stages is one of those things that you do not want to go into because best of ones don't favor teams that make great adjustments as sets goes on. You don't get a chance to adjust. You have to do it mid-game and then just get ready for the next one no matter the outcome.
And if you don't know about the best of ones, every team will play every team, and obviously the best teams will come out on top. The top 2 qualify for the wildcard spots at hi-rez Expo. And they'll have some tricky opposition because obviously the number 1 seeds will be facing off against them from North America and Europe anyway, for sure, probably as early as the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen what these group stages can do to teams' brackets, or just not even getting that top seed that you expect. I mean, think back to Season 2 Worlds where C9 and Epsilon at the time, now Energy, face off in the semifinals instead of the expected finals matchup that everyone expected. These seedings, even if you can make it through your semifinal match to get to Sunday to face off in your regional finals, those seeding matches are incredibly important.
Going to be a long day today as well. Obviously, we do have this pause coming out. We'll get you more info on that as soon as I know it. At the same time, though, there is patch notes today. If you remember, it's a patch notes kind of day. Ooh. That'll be starting around 3 p.m. is the hard start, not hard start time, but soft start time for this. Depending how long this set goes, and if they go all 5 games, it could be just past 3 o'clock. Patch notes scheduled for at least an hour. And then on top of that, you've also got the caster, which will announce the finalists there, followed up by a great other set of LG versus Space Station.
Yeah, I hope you're ready for Smite. I hope you have your snacks, some drinks, you know, you're all ready because it's going to be a long day of great Smite content.
We saw some of the behind-the-scenes footage there. Let's go to a quick video. We'll be back momentarily.
My expectations for Super Regionals is that we're going to win, and it's been quite scary for me. I always get really anxious before we play and before lands in general, but I see that as a good thing because it's how much I care. You know, it reminds you why you're doing it, and as awful as it is at the time to go through those emotions, it makes it worth it.
I mean, I expect to win just like any other team, but you know, what happens, happens.
We're gonna probably just lose every game, not even close. If we actually get kill, I'll consider this like a successful week.
Making it to Worlds and then being a contender at Worlds, which I think we can do. And I'm confident in everybody in my team that we can do that. And that's what I expected when I joined this team.
We have arguments, you know, it happens, but I feel like when we have them arguments, we know like something is really wrong. So we step up from that point. And that's that's how it works, you know. When you know there's a problem, you work harder to fix it. So my expectations would be to definitely qualify for Worlds.
My expectations for my team are to beat Trifecta and win the finals, or at least go to like a 5-game set with whoever's there.
Well, Dodgers thinks we'll get 08. We'll lose 3-0 to Obey and then lose all our gauntlet games. Thinks it'll be funny, but I have more hopes. I think it's like if we lose first game, we'll lose to Obey, but if we don't, I think we'll win.
I feel like we've been improving a lot. I think this split we weren't that good. Usually new metas we're not that good in the start. I don't know, I was pretty slow to adapt, but like we had a boot camp now and I think we learned a lot from that, so I think we know it.
I feel like we're going to perform really well at this LAN. Our scrims have been going really well. I feel like we've been learning a lot of things with Aqua on the team, and just overall team atmosphere is really good.
Welcome back to the desk. My name's, well, it's still Tom Ballinger, but this time I've turned my taco into a hazer. I'm here joined by the coach of Obey. How you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Looking forward to watching these games.
Fantastic. Just letting you guys know, I know we had an extended situation earlier. So game number 2, the players paused, and there was a technical difficulty during it. So we're going to go ahead and have them remake it. It was very early in the game. Nothing actually happened. Same picks, same bands, same game. But we'll see actually what happens when they hit the battlefield. So Hazer, as a coach, you're naturally out there taking notes and talking picks and bands. So let's just break down this draft real quick. Trifecta sort of repeated what they did in game number 1 despite the loss. They have two tanks, Ymir and Artio, paired up with an Afro, and then eUnited, on the other hand, they stuck with the AMC and Herc and sprinkled different characters around them.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did see Trifecta go for a similar kind of draft, but they kind of mixed up their start that game. What they did that game was they started on the red and on the speed to ensure that they could get the first spawns of their own buffs and get those timers so that they could, you know, continue farming throughout the continuing spawns of those buffs.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting to see how eUnited now adjust to that. This pause almost would have favored eUnited, but eUnited did pick up that first blood in that game, so they were a bit ahead there.
Yeah, going to be washed away, however, as we get into game 2. So admin decision, and I think the players are thumbs up about it. I think this makes sense. Basically what happened was during the pause, it like forced characters to back, so that kind of screws everything up.
Yeah, it totally messes up the flow of the game. If you have a pause from someone DCing or something and you have to back out, then you're just off on your timings for your back camps, for the mid camps, for the fire imps, and it can really affect the flow of the game. So I think it's a good decision to remake.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, as a player, even if you have the first blood, I think this is the better way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be winning by default. I think teams are really out here wanting to prove themselves. I mean, we do all really care about winning, but we all like playing the game. We all like competitive games. So, yeah.
So with that in mind, I mean, taking a look at these two drafts, how do you think these two squads will level up against each other?
So I prefer the eUnited draft for sure. I think Trifecta are lacking a bit of pressure, which I think is very important in this meta. I think we've seen it in game 1. I think they struggle with mid pressure because they picked Aphrodite. On the other side, eUnited have a Raijin, you know, very strong at level 1, very good at pushing. So I think eUnited, again, they can take control of the game from level 1 as long as they manage to snowball that without making mistakes. Game 1, they made a slight mistake at the Portal Demon, where they lost some deaths and lost the Fire Giant in the end.
Yeah,
but they did manage to, you know, bring it back, calm down, take control again.
At the same time, there are so many upsides to Afro. Her early game is definitely a downside. But as the game gets later and later, paired up with an Izanami, even the Ratatoskr, I mean, this Trifecta draft does have significant upside to it.
Yeah, Afro definitely gets to that stage where she's kind of unkillable in the late game, and she makes someone else very, very difficult to kill as well.
Yeah.
So if Trifecta can keep these fights going for a long time, keep everyone on the team alive, they can definitely win these late game team fights.
Aggro brought it up in game number 1. The damage that back off deals is very scary and deceptively strong, especially since as a mid lane Afro, I mean, as an Afro period, you're building power. You're not building defense a lot of the time. You're building a lot of the time traditional mage. You get that route to Hootie, all of a sudden you're slamming. And I think people always forget the damage, the amplification from the stun on the kiss.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, if you can get both Afro and her person who she's got kissed together and hit the back off, you can actually double proc that.
Yeah.
With a huge amount of damage onto a single target or even multiple targets. So it looks like Hurriwind has practiced his character hard, so I think we'll see him make good use of that.
You know, when it comes down to it, I want to talk to you a little bit about, you have a team playing up against Rival. Now, we know that they've struggled during the regular split, but you guys have played against them at various lands, and when they're really working on all cylinders. Rival is a team that has this sort of offbeat meta. They exist in their own little bubble. Trifecta does as well. So we look at this draft and we sort of evaluate it at face value, but you also have to sort of add that variable in that, like, that's just Trifecta. They do weird stuff.
Yeah. We saw Snoopy playing AMC, Yonks before anybody else bothered to pick it up. So they definitely like to do their own thing. They definitely practice things that other teams maybe don't consider. I think that maybe shows their innovativeness. That's a word.
Just say it's Scottish.
Yeah, it shows how innovative they are. Definitely. So I definitely think that this Afro pick is something that they will have theory crafted and practiced hard. And I think if it doesn't go well this game, I think they will drop it. But I'm hopeful that it can work out.
I'm going to ask you for a prediction. Who do you think takes game 2?
I got eUnited.
You got eUnited? I'm going to be a little less scared this time. I think it didn't work in game 1, but I think it will work in game 2. I'll split, and I'll say Trifecta take game 2. One more time, bringing you the action. It's Graham, and it's Ryan.
Thanks so much, F. And yes, we are back to bring you Game 2 once again. We did have to remake that one. The technicalities of it we'll get through at some point, but it's time to start this one over. Back to the drawing board. Same picks, same bands, we'll be going straight into game.
And as Hazer mentioned on the desk there, the pressure for eUnited in the mid and right-hand side is where eUnited was focusing their attention, and I expect they will do more of the same. Exactly. No reason to change it because it worked so well already. Snoopy having this Izanami, that's where the pressure could be for Trifecta, but AMC has really good clear too. Yes, Izanami's the best, but AMC not too far behind, so even in the lane where Trifecta should have the pressure, will they? Ultimately is the question.
Well, let's see how this one starts out, if anything changes this time round. Because obviously, they got a bit of an idea of each other's ideas, and both teams are starting a little bit differently here. Snoopy's in mid with Hurriwind right now. The whole of eUnited grouped together in this right-hand side jungle, looking for a sneaky pick, potentially. Obviously, those wards from PolarBearMike early on, you can see because of the chalice. He's got one down at the speed buff to see what's happening here, and it looks like they're sending Cynosure to the left-hand side here.
I like this from PBM. Put both of these wards down on the most important buffs in the early game, the red buff and the speed buff. Blue buff also very important in the early stages, but those are the ones that people could start at. Remember, that's where Hurriwind started in the last game, or this game, I should say, was getting those minis off of the red buff and then transitioning towards mid. This time, it's Snoopy. He was starting in that duo lane before. Now he's starting in mid with Ven and PandaCat, but there's no way they get pressure here against the Raijin AMC.
Aror is on the right-hand side of the map, starting the speed buff, because Cynosure is actually in the duo lane. Ymir, combined with the help of the Artio, should be able to bring this buff down, hopefully before eUnited can get there, and will do so, and actually relinquish a little bit of the pressure there, but Cyno boxing with PolarBearMike. Mike's a tanky little dwarf. He's going to be a little bit careful about the amount of damage he takes.
Yeah, Cyno doesn't have that extra Acorn, that finished off Acorn, to give himself some heals off of those abilities. Now that Hand of the Gods that Aurora has picked up in that support role, now he gets to help Kiki secure his buffs on the right-hand side. This is the adjustment that they've made.
Onto two characters there from Kiki. Really focus on the wave clear more often than not, but it's Aurora that ends up taking a bit more damage. Obviously, minions come into play. Cynosure's too far forward. Habit time comes out as well from PolarBearMike. Cynosure's got to run away. Sprint was popped. PBM wanted the kill, but Panda was like, nope. All we can really get from this is going to be those minions.
A little bit too excited there from PBM. With the sprint, I mean, there's no cooldowns left for anyone on eUnited, and Cyno still, even without a speed buff, has got some extra movement speed from that tier 1 of Acorn. There's no way that he and PandaCat can close that gap and find the kill. Needs to be a little bit more wary of the actual kill potential there. Ends up wasting a relic.
Well, not to mention as well, Aurora did start off with Hand of the Gods in this as well. That allowed them for that wave clear on that speed buff a little bit earlier. And now Trifecta looking to invade the speed buff of eUnited. Oracle's contested between the two there, and now the speed buff has been stolen by Trifecta, but they might get pinched.
Now Kiki's in trouble, but Ven a little bit off the mark with that Raiju. Aurora trying to get everyone away because of Kiki's sprint. Good stun there by Benji, but no one else was there from eUnited. A much better start already for Trifecta, getting buffs on the right-hand side instead of just losing their own.
Yeah, the decision-making of where to send people at the start really made an impact in this one. 2 minutes in now, and now everyone pretty much even between these two teams. If anything, Trifecta slightly ahead in terms of buffage, I'd say, so far.
And this is the early game pressure that eUnited was really supposed to have. Now, by the time these buffs respawn, I expect that it will be eUnited with pressure in the majority of these lanes, because now Snoopy has rotated into the duo lane, relinquishing that pressure in the mid lane that he had given to Hurriwind, and kind of leaving it to the Aphrodite, who of course won't be able to keep that nearly as easily without the Izanami. But now with PBM and PandaCat on this left-hand side, means that it's a little bit easier for them to play up. Now they do have to be wary of Cynosure's rotations, because I mean Cyno spent the entirety of the first part of this game too on that left-hand side earlier on. So will he do the same here?
Well, talking right-hand side as well, you can see Aror is still looking to pressure out Benji and allow Kiki some pressure in this lane, something that Kiki didn't have in game 1, and it really allowed now for him to get himself to a semi-decent level to stay equal with the Hercules.
Now this idea from Trifecta is working out a lot better for them. Cyno's going to go in here, take a lot of damage in return. He's going to go up into the ultimate, actually uses both the ultimate from Cyno and Hurriwind just to get some poke onto Ven. Not the best decision there from Cyno and Hurriwind.
It felt like a damage check, if anything else coming out from Cynosure, but it was a risky damage check that actually cost them 2 ultimates, and now that means eUnited have a power play around this speed buff.
This is a bad time to have both those ultimates be wasted because speed just spawned. Aurora is here. Has the hog available, but even it doesn't want to go into the middle of 4.
No.
That one decision ends up really costing Trifecta there. Their buff on the right-hand side, the speed in particular, going eUnited's way.
Here's a chance, though, for Snoopy now after clearing that wave to look towards the red buff of eUnited, but instead, going to play it safe, come back to his own half of the map. Trifecta looking to just basically hold on during the early game. We saw it in game 1, the issues they struggled with there, and this time around, it's working out so far so good, even with Hurriwind taking, looks like 2 trips back to base already. He's burning through his mana pool a lot quicker than he would like to, especially after going for the Book of Toth start.
Well, I believe the first time he went for a Sands of Time right off the bat. A Sands of Time and a Bumba's Mask. This time, it's the Soul Trap here for him, starting off with that Book of Thothrush, as you mentioned, and that means that he really does need someone there with him in the mid lane at all times if he wants to go and clear any jungle camps in the early game, and that's why Cyno has spent so much time here with him. That's why Snoopy was here, because he's got someone with Bumbas in those situations to try and tank up these jungle buffs for him, whereas he could really do it before with the Sans Bumbas start.
Well, Elementals on the right-hand side going to be 3-man split by Trifecta and secured, and now the invade for the speed buff happens once more. Hunters will duel it out for the Oracles on the left-hand side. Looks like it could be an interestingly close one between the two. Not sure who got those.
It was split down the middle between Cyno and PandaCat, or excuse me, Snoopy and PandaCat, but it cost Snoopy his ultimate. Speed buff invade was successful on the right-hand side for Trifecta. That Hand of the Gods for Aurora, paying dividends already.
Seems the hog has been the big telling point more than anything else, and having Artio sit on this right-hand side of the map has relinquished some of the pressure that eUnited established previously in this one. Snoopy, though, being able to pressure enough on to PandaCat to allow him to look towards the purple, but with PolarBearMike swinging around, the purple will be safer now.
Mostly because Cynosure is on the right-hand side of the map. Even with the Ratatoskr ultimate, it's not getting you from solo to duo anytime soon. So you need to be a little bit more wary of your invade positioning without your big, early game jungler there to support you.
How do you feel about Blink Raven jungle? I feel like it's Blink root and then ult follow-up when they try to escape. Is that all it's for?
Yeah, it's more that you don't have to worry about using your ultimate to engage all the time. You can use it to chase someone down after they use their mobility to get away. It's really to close the gap to Cynosure in particular, who Scream could really look for if he had spotted him out on those back harpies. Because Rat is going to dash away as soon as you get on top of him, and then you can use the ultimate to close that gap. Also for Aphrodite, who's going to use that back off to try and create some distance. The stun from the kiss will create some distance. It's to make sure that you could use your ultimate for that finish off damage or the continued chase sort of damage, or to use it to get away.
Well, Kiki got some help in the early game from the Artio, but he's still finding himself behind an experience by currently 2 levels. It'll probably be 1 after this wave, and this is mainly realistically been down to the fact that he's been splitting the wave a little bit more now. In the jungle, the mighty jungle Scream has to get away from the danger for now. Aurora will dash back towards safety, but could be a defense of this speed buff.
Cyno looking for Scream in particular. No, it's going to be Venenu he hits with the knockup. A good patience from Ven, doesn't use the purification beads, and now it's the stun by PBM. Cyno's in a bit of trouble, but Scream takes a big chunk of damage right away.
Good does get away with the ultimate, though. Over the wall comes Venenu to help out. Cynosure's the one really in danger now. Scream's baits were good enough. It wasn't really a bait, but he'll class it as that.
Benji here with his ultimate in mid lane. He takes a decent chunk. Kiki pops a sprint to try and close the gap. The freeze is there, but he was DR'd. Kiki will still pick up the first kill for Trifecta with that ultimate.
Oh, great ult from Aurora, though, to make sure, from Venenu, rather, to kill Aurora. Now Kiki will fall on him. Venenu doesn't matter about a remake, boys. I'll still get a double kill in the mid lane.
PandaCat even steals away the red buff through Snoopy's ultimate. eUnited winning hand over fist all across the map. The first blood going their way. They get 2 more kills than Trifecta, and a couple buff invades go their way as well. And now I love what Venenu's doing. He knows that no one's close. Does have to be a little bit worried about where Cynosure is, though, because he's coming soon.
Oh, that was a lot of poke onto Hurriwind there. And Hurriwind lower mana too, which means once he uses these doves, he'll be healthy enough for now, but probably a trip back to base is going to be required yet again. And there you can see the player matchup in the mid lane. These two, sorry, not the mid lane, Cynosure versus Scream. This is going to be an interesting one as this continues.
Yeah, it was Scream on the run at first there, but the good peel from all of eUnited and really just not enough damage from Cynosure to close the gap and find the kill. And that's one where Cyno knows he's dying. And as soon as he dashes in to try and chase that Mystic Rush, he knows he's dead. And that's why instead of turning around and saying, you know, I didn't get him, he tries to continue the chase and say, well, at least I'll try and get first blood before I fall. But good communication there from eUnited. Make sure that it's not them falling for first blood, it's them picking it up.
Funny enough, the only thing that was really different there is if Cynosure hit those acorns, Scream was dead. And that could have been a completely different situation there for Trifecta. In the end, it's going to go the way of eUnited because Cynosure just couldn't find the pick he was looking for.
PandaCat this time, instead of the Talaria boots, goes for the tank boots option right away, trying to give himself some extra protection. Is Scream going to blink in right on top of Cyno, do plenty of damage to him. That forces him up into the Cosmos, but it's Aror who has to dash away for the moment.
So it's a trade out. Blink for the ultimate out of Cynosure there. Benji versus Kiki. Once again, Benji going to win that trade, and Kiki once again has to lick his wounds of having no blue buff. And Scream in mid, still looking at Aror, but Hurriwind over the wall has helped him out just enough to sustain him back towards a better health pool.
Good communication there between Aror and Hurriwind to trust each other, making sure that those Afro heals come through, even through the ultimate from Scream, and used it to try and close the gap onto Aror, who again has gone for a magical damage option right away. Magical protection, magical damage with that Void Stone, trying to shut down what Venenu is going to do to him earlier on. Makes a lot more sense than trying to shut down what a Morrigan's going to do to you early on. Problem is again, an early game oriented jungler from eUnited with that Raven is going to be, I mean, Auror's going to be a great target for him.
I love what Venenu did in the mid lane there too. He walked back into lane, saw two characters and went, not even scared. Not even scared, I'm going to walk up and bang my drums in your face. Not concerned at all about seeing Hurriwind and Aror both facing down him on the other side of the lane.
And it's because he's already finished off that Book of Thoth. We talk about it a lot when it comes to finishing your Devo gauntlets before you finish your boots. But this time it's finishing the Book of Thoth before you finish your boots. Is you get those stacks going a lot earlier on. And then whenever you finish your boots, all of a sudden you are way ahead in terms of damage and extra mana that you got from that item.
Cynosure going to be able to dash away from the root, but Scream's still trying to give chase. Can't get any damage on with his fist there, just out of range. Cynosure used that dash nicely to avoid a lot of potential damage output.
I like what Ven's gone for here. Put a lot of points into your Percussive Storm, 4 to be exact, but then start to level up that second ability, your Raiju, because Percussive Storm's going to full clear the wave already at that stage with the just 4 points.
Oh, but anyone under pressure here from Cynosure, and the drums of war have been sounded. Is the hammer available for Mike? The disarm will be to allow Venenu to escape, but I don't think Cynosure's done just yet. Cancel that. He sees the rotation coming from eUnited, and he has to hang around, and in the end, PandaCat will take his life. The Bear's in trouble. It will resustain back up, but yet again, a kill for eUnited with a hot rotation from the whole team.
And yet again, it's Benji's rotation that ends up making the difference, and it's also PandaCat. I mean, Snoopy's still in lane. Kiki rotated late. It's eUnited just being a little bit quicker to the fight in the mid lane, and that's just, even with you having pressure in the duo lane, it's PandaCat giving up a wave to try and make the rotation and ends up getting a kill for it, so it's worth it for him. And that's utilizing that pressure that Benji has earned for himself on the right side of the map by out-clearing Kiki consistently to then punish him for it to be the first one there in the mid lane.
So about 2.5k gold lead now for eUnited with these 4 kills. The experience as well is something very important to note, mainly between the solo laners here. There's a level difference between the mid laners and junglers too, as you can see on that. But the actual itemization is starting to come online for everybody now. Both Book of Toughs now finished. Scream there, potentially looking, I'm expecting maybe for a Brawlers, or is it too early for a Brawlers?
I don't think it's too early for a Brawlers against an Aphrodite. No way. Not against an Artio as well, who's going to be healing. I mean, Cynosure again going for the Glad Shield, and that stacks on that healing that Acorn gives him. So that's plenty of healing for the Ratatoskr that you can shut down with the Brawlers. Now, it is going to be a Jotuns here for Scream, and that concerns me a little bit. It's really when I look at the Artio and the Ratatoskr heals on top of the Aphrodite, I think that Brawlers may have done him more good here.
Bit of a collapse coming onto Snoopy on this left-hand side. They're going to force out his beads and his escape. And meanwhile, Cynosure has to defensively ult too. Realizes there's 4 around this area here. They go in for damage. I wasn't sure if he was thinking about it because it could have been a risk by doing so.
Man, I love the way PandaCat plays the game. He's first one in there. The engage is just a stinger right into Snoopy, and then everything can happen after that as Aror takes a big chunk of damage right away between PBM and PandaCat. Remember, these are the two that took a 2v3
now the
in game 1.
Because Scream is here, Benji in mid lane now, Kiki's coming over. eUnited feeling very confident about this Gold Fury attempt, knowing Snoopy's beads are down.
Venenu off the mark again with that Raijin. Look at where Kiki is, though. Van's dash is down. That's the man to focus, but a good ultimate. Now Kiki's the one in trouble.
The timing, the beads, and the ultimate of Venenu at the same time means Ymir is no longer here. Aurora is just trying to dance around as Snoopy is being pressured by Benji and Scream. Double kill for Benji. Venenu gets himself another there, and now the Gold Fury is completely exposed.
Man, that is clean from eUnited. They split up that fight beautifully. Kiki thinks that he's got a great path in to start that fight, but Venenu doesn't even have to use a Purification Bead, just times those Taiko drums beautifully to give him some CC immunity. He and PolarBearMike and PandaCat, they all focused down Kiki. We're screaming Benji. By the time we got to their part of the team fight, Hurriwind was already dead, Snoopy was nearly dead, Aror was nearly dead, and that was just with 2 people against 3. That's that early game Hercules in the Ravana that is so hard to deal with.
Oh, Cynosure wanted to get his own speed buff there. Won't be the case. Stolen away by 3 members of eUnited. And go back to that fight again. The play there was Kiki going for a freeze onto PandaCat and Venenu, the carries of eUnited, and both of them responded in a hair of a second. Beads out of PandaCat to allow him to just keep beating down Kiki. And Venenu just drops the ult like, okay, you came to play, and this isn't going to be the one you really want.
And that's the problem with Benji getting such a lead, is that Kiki is so far behind that doesn't matter. I mean, you saw quickly how quickly he died in that engagement. Is now Cynos looking for Venenu. That time gets the Purification Beads out and forces him back. So a slight win for Trifecta, but I doubt eUnited is going to let him do this Portal Demon.
No, and the Portal Demon may have to be reset again, especially once Benji turns up to the fray. Cynosure is going to take to the sky, try and force back a couple of members of eUnited, specifically Venenu, whose drums of war are available once more. Looking to pressure onto Snoopy, gets soloed in the left-hand side as this is going on. Cynosure's isolated from his team. Kiki's so low, but so is Benji. The sustain for both of them is coming into play, but Scream says not today. No escape this time round, Sunshine. eUnited are just ruffle stomping Trifecta in game 2.
That's just pure dominance from eUnited in this game. I mean, PandaCat getting the solo, we talked about it already. No one in NA does more damage on land per game than PandaCat. And here he is again. I'm sure he's near the top of the player damage charts. He's 2-0-4 on this AMC, getting the solo kill there up against Snoopy, while the rest of his team is just bodying on the right-hand side. Good idea from Trifecta. We forced out the Purification Beads from Venenu. Now we'll jump on with Ratatoskr. Well, now he just ulted and did a ton of damage to us. Ven cannot be the focus anymore because my man's level 14. He's 5-0-4. He's killing the damage right now. He's killing the whole game for eUnited, and you got to give shout-outs to PolarBearMike as well. 10 kills he's been a part of now for eUnited, 1-0-9. The only one he missed is the solo kill on the left-hand side.
Tell you what, if I was Trifecta, I wish we didn't have to do a remake now because, yeah, the remake came through, but eUnited weren't as far ahead as they were right now, and it didn't look as dominant. And the funny thing is the pressure in this scenario completely shifted. It's Venenu, the one that's really come to play in this one now, and he's being led in by, I will say, Scream is making an impact on this, which is something that Ravana has really struggled with throughout this year after his initial invasion to the jungle. It didn't work out as well as everybody continued to see.
It was basically Cuvo Fred who still said, yeah, I can do whatever I want on this god, but you know, I don't think it's Ravana so much as it is Cuvo Fred doing whatever it is on whatever god he wants to play that given day. Scream making it look like the god and himself are top tier right now in the jungle.
So now eUnited, if they win this game, they will be just 1 game away for securing hi-rez Expo for themselves. Some of those players will be making returning trips for a second time at least.
Yeah, PandaCat, Benji have been there once before, and PolarBearMike was there last year with the Allegiance team that ended up losing to Lich, and you know he doesn't get too happy whenever I talk about that. But it's you know it would be his second attempt at the World Championships.
Well, double pressure coming out here. Right-hand side, you see Ravana and Hercules pressuring the speed buff, stealing that one away, and allowing Benji to 2v1 on this right-hand side, just keeping 2 of them busy, which means the 3 on the left from Trifecta can't really fight the 3 that are over here. Take into account his Fire Giant buff, and when the extra sustain comes out, or at least the attack speed from PolarBearMike onto PandaCat, that's going to cause some problems.
He's already got a Shogun's Kasari now on the left-hand side around the back. Here comes Scream right looking for Snoopy. Big damage right away. That Aegis not going to save his life. Venenu gets number 6.
Cynosure didn't hit his ult onto the target. It was after. He will still pick up Venenu, though. But Scream has taken out Hurriwind and then will slap Aror in the face, too. Cynosure goes down and Scream gets a triple. Cheeky little torn out of the lad. But it's deserved. 4-0 and 8, 15-2. And Kiki can't do anything about this tier 2.
You know what? There are a lot of things in that team fight that went as well as humanly possible for Trifecta, and they still got triple killed and wiped, basically. Only Kiki stayed alive. The things that went well for Trifecta there, Venenu doesn't cancel his ultimate, so he can't use his Aegis, can't use his beads. He ends up falling. Getting a kill onto him is really important. And Benji wasn't even a part of that fight. Benji's done so much for eUnited so far in this set on this Hercules, and he wasn't even there to participate in that team fight, and they still got stomped on it on the left-hand side. Scream wrapping around, no ward coverage there from Trifecta. Snoopy had no chance to survive. He was immediately the focus, and deservedly so. He's the highest level on Trifecta, and that's only level 15. To put that in perspective, PBM is level 14 on the other side.
This feels like this game could close as one of the quickest in Super Regionals history, I want to say. Like, I've been around a long time, and I don't remember a game going this bad, this quick. With the snowball that eUnited have put together for themselves here, Trifecta haven't had an answer. And if Trifecta lose this, like I said, they're going to have to play each game as best of ones just to try and stay in it.
And this is impressive to me because, you know, normally we don't talk about this aspect of it as much, but when you go through a remake as a player in a game where you were off to a really good start, it can be frustrating. It can be tilting. You can get in your own head and say, well, you know, why did they remake blah blah blah. That none of that's important. You just have to focus on what your game plan is going into the game. And eUnited, as you mentioned, got off to a better start in this game than they did in game 1, and that's hard to do.
Snoopy waits to try to scream, and he might be able to do so. One hit will be enough, and Snoopy gets credit for the kill. Gives him a bit of taunt back of like, get a triple kill, son. You ain't that strong. The bad news is the tier 2 tower is still going to fall before the rest of Trifecta can get here to help out.
PandaCat has that Magi's Blessing again. Tier 2 still up, and now PolarBearMike's forced up. And in that transformation, Benji right in the middle of 4 people, and no one even wants to look at him.
Thorns is causing a bit of a problem. Kiki getting very low. Great driving strike again from Benji. After the Earthbreaker, Cynosure will land onto Venenu, who dips away to safety. Cyno tries to get back to safety, but the drums and the boulder will end his life too. Earthbreaker again. Another driving strike. Hurriwind, good night, sweet prince. You will be missed.
My God, Benji is just giving everybody whiplash on the other side. PandaCat is going to take the 1v1. Benji just stood there and hyped him up, just laughing at Snoopy as he trusted Panda to finish off that 1v1. You're right. I mean, someone's got to do something to Benji's Herc because this has been an impressive performance.
So obviously, like, I'm not upset about Kiki's Ymir. I think Ymir is a fantastic pick at certain times in the solo lane. Against the Hercules, though, the call is either you ban the Herc or you put something against it that's not going to give it free opportunities to just do what Benji's been doing it with every fight.
Look, the raid boss thing, you know, oh, they killed the raid boss in Smite. Whenever I hear that phrase, I immediately think of Hercules. That's the guy who it just feels unkillable. And when you give him a free lead in that solo lane, when you pay no attention to that side of the map, you give your solo laner a god that physically cannot get pressure against the Hercules, then yeah, he's going to become the raid boss. Now, just because he gets a lot of farm doesn't mean Benji's going to be auto-tracking everyone with the Earthbreaker driving strike combination
because
like he has
his
been.
Skill. That's his skill level. He's been able to hit those Earthbreakers and driving strikes time and time again. But because of the lead, he's actually able to hold so much damage, take so much damage, which is allowing so many problems for Trifecta where they can't kill him, and on top of that, he's then hitting it with Earthbreakers every single time on rotation.
Oh, Snoopy's got to watch out because here comes Benji waiting for the dash away, trying to find it blind, but decides to hold the cooldown for the moment.
If you found that blind, I'm asking for a remake for hacks. That's what I'm saying there. Right-hand side, though, Phoenix being siege. Middle Phoenix is already dead. Benji found Snoopy. Drums come out from Venenu. Didn't look for the kill because he wanted to give Benji the double. Off the wall, the pinball wizard comes into play. Venenu gets another. This is it. This is game 2 in the bag. eUnited looking to book their spot in hi-rez Expo very, very quickly.
Tell you what, they came to play today. eUnited came in with a plan. They came in mad. I don't know who said something to eUnited to make them mad, but they came in ready to go today because Trifecta is not a team that should get routed like that in any stage. In that, again, keep in mind, eUnited had to go into that game having a lead in the first version of it, gets remade, and then they just play better. And they were playing great in that game too. So this is, in my mind, 2.5 games in a row where eUnited has just dominated Trifecta.
I think it's time to move away from Afro, though.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying that is not because I don't think Afro is bad. I just think her early game presence is so weak and lackluster, and they're being exposed because of that.
Look, eUnited is not a team that you can give free pressure to in multiple lanes. If you give up one lane with a late game god, sure, it's fine. Hurriwind is great at these gods that clear the wave early. Raijin, give him his Kukulkan. Give him something that can clear the wave early on and allow him to rotate and allow him to stay even with Venenu. Give Kiki something that he can really pressure that lane with. His Nike, his Odin. These are gods that clear the wave early on that he can actually contest with Benji on his own buffs, things like that. When you're giving eUnited 2 lanes for free and saying, hey, you get as much farm as you want here, we'll catch you in 15 minutes, eUnited says, sure, we'll see you, and we've got a 10k gold lead in a fire giant by that point.
Crazy. Well, Trifecta now have to win 3 games in a row if they want to book their spot for hi-rez Expo today. Otherwise, they'll be going to the wildcards. But let's rate game 2 down. We'll head over to the desk and see what they thought about that game.
Musical chairs here, folks, as I'm joined by Taco this time around. Welcome back. But music not to the ears of Trifecta. Unfortunately for them and their fans, dropping 2 games in a row here in a best-of-5 in our Super Regional semifinals.
That just looked painful the whole way through for Trifecta. Even after the reset, it didn't seem to affect eUnited at all when it came to establishing a lead and establishing dominance. And Agro probably hit the nail on the head. Primary issue, you can't allow eUnited to just have that many freebie lanes. I don't really have too many gripes with the Aphrodite in the mid lane. Hurriwind was still holding his own in that role. But when it came to the solo lane, you're kind of just giving the free pass to Benji. You know he already loves to play aggressive. You know with the Hercules he can play aggressive. Yeah. And poor Kiki, man, he kind of just has to sit there and take it.
I would have liked to see maybe a Herc ban, sure. But let it be. The wonderful thing about Smite here is that it's a multifaceted game. And let it be known that I actually have no beef whatsoever with this draft. I actually really enjoyed what Trifecta brought out. It was a little bit weird, but kind of perfect for them. They get a little bit of Ymir in the solo lane, some Afro in the middle lane. Sure, that's all well and good. I don't think that they lost game 1 or game 2 on this draft. But I think that once a strategy doesn't work 2 games in a row, you move away from it because Scream has just been able to do whatever the hell he wants. 5-2-7 last game, and he's just been a real problem here. Here he is on the Ravana.
I mean, there were numerous little team fights throughout the game that kind of just determined the pacing of it. At 7 minutes, that was the first actual team fight that we saw, and that went 3-1 in favor of eUnited. In double that time, by the 15.5-minute mark, legit only 7 minutes later, eUnited had the Fire Giant. They were up 11,000 gold, and everything else after that is just pure disaster. Healer compositions, just not the place you want to be in whenever you have an enemy team that is just snowballing that heavily. There wasn't really a way for Trifecta to try and respond to that, even if they wanted to, because their only form of response really is let them siege every single tower, let them forfeit all of our objectives, and they can't afford to do that because then eUnited just continues walking right at them.
Yeah, I mean, Trifecta had a draft that they had to be aggressive with. They had to be all over everybody. Unfortunately, look at that, 14% of the speed buffs belonged to Trifecta. That goes to show just how strong Scream was able to, how strongly Scream was able to walk all over the map and pretty much do whatever he wanted. When you pick this tank and Aphrodite and carry lineup, you want to be in the driver's seat. You've got Nadja in game number 1. You've got Ratatoskr in game number 2. Be the team that pushes forward. Now, like I said, I don't think it had everything to do with the draft. It was just execution. And when it comes down to it, just unable to really make it happen. eUnited there discussing things over with a little bit of potassium.
That's one way to call it. Just all the bananas in the world. Salt really enjoying that one. And as far as team fights are concerned, though, for eUnited, they know they're feeling good. They've got to be feeling good right now They're already up 2 games, and knowing that the next one is going to seal the deal on their spot at Worlds at least. I mean, they'll still have to play it out Sunday for seeding, but the most important part is just having that locked away mentally. This has got to be taking a little bit of a toll on Trifecta. I know most of the time pro players will say things like, oh, no, there's ways to bounce back in that sort of environment, but when you get the reset in a game that already looked terrible, and then you get beat probably 3 times worse in the next 10 minutes, that it takes a toll, and it's a really hard mindset to come back from, because every single match after this, if they want to try and run it back with the reverse sweep, it's basically best of 1.
Yeah, I mean, this last one, relatively quick. I mean, Scream kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting. Only 11,000 player damage. It's not a knock at him. That's a knock at how long it took, or how quickly they were able to beat Trifecta, right? So Trifecta here really have to go back to the drawing board and identify what went wrong. Because as I said 1,000 times here, it wasn't the characters, it wasn't the gods, it wasn't P's and B's, Taco. It was just execution. These guys just got beat. And that's a problem, because when it's a problem in draft, you can go, look, we didn't have pressure here. And sure, I guess you can say that. When it's a problem in the game and you look at specifically, all right, we team fought over here, that was a problem. No, Trifecta last game just got wrecked. And you've played at a high level in organized play. Talk a little bit. What can you say about, I mean, that type of game bouncing back? Is that even a possibility?